I want to start with the banger.
Yeah, what do we disagree with?
What do you guys disagree about coaching CrossFit? And let me get your little bullshit caveat out of the way. Well, there's probably way more we agree about than we don't. And blah, 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 blah.
I have one that's always
hold on.
funny.
So we got that out of the way.
I pronounce strength. Is that what you were going to say, you fucker?
That is true.
We can circle back to the caveat at the end.
Yeah,
but right now, let's have the fireworks. What do y'all disagree about?
I have no... First of all, Max is very correct. He says strength, which is not a word. There's a G in there. So
I think the audience would agree with
you.
Strength.
Why do you do it that way?
I don't know, man.
Do you notice you're doing it?
No.
Do you think other people say it weird?
I still can barely, like when people pronounce it how I pronounce it and then say it, it's like my brain can't distinguish the difference in audio. Maybe I'm going deaf early or something.
So
hold on, say them back to back and see if you can do it.
Strength. Well, a strength.
No, Brannen. You listen to Brannen.
Strength.
Which is the good one?
The second.
Oh my God.
The latter.
With the E. Strength.
No, it has nothing to do with the E.
Yeah. Strength.
You don't put a G in there. It's strength.
Yeah, you do strength.
Oh.
Strength.
Just strength.
No, you know what? Keep doing you, man.
Yeah.
What do y'all disagree about?
So the first...
Fuck your pronunciation.
Yeah.
The first couple of months that I came on board with Training Think Tank, Max and Kyle Ruth were putting together I think it was a strength course. Is that what it was called? The original strength course that we did. Yeah. And Max was like, hey, can you review this, take notes? It's kind of like a good way for me to learn, but then also like, were there any errors in the video? And the first time he said it, I was like, whoa, what did he just say? And then he says the word because it's a strength course like 500 times. So every time he's like, when we're talking about strength speed, we're talking about speed strength. I was dying laughing.
Well, it is what it is. Is that the actual
Are you
thing?
dodging the fucking question, bro?
Okay, I'll give one.
Go ahead, just disagree. No fucking caveat.
This is more for Kyle Ruth, but I think that
Whoa! I didn't ask about Kyle Ruth.
I think the focus of swimming in the past during our games and even semifinal prep was too intensive, and we left things out that should have been on the field and or in the gym.
Do you agree with this, Max?
Yeah,
you do agree.
Yeah, I mean.
But is this a hindsight's 2020 thing?
Well, should I have a caveat to it or
Sure,
no?
Go ahead.
Well,
caveats for everybody.
Hindsight being that if there's a swim workout and somebody needs to actually get better at swimming for that one workout out of 15 and they're trying to go from real far back in the pack to the middle of the pack, the time investment to get better at swimming is so high. I think in hindsight, when you look at the math on how things play out, you'd just be better off phoning in the swim if you're not already a good swimmer and putting more time in the gym. So I think that my thoughts about how we train people have changed in a way that's in agreement with Brannen. I think he just voiced those concerns before I had came to that same conclusion.
Got it. And your original gripe was you want to...
Yeah, so I think
do more muscle ups, do more things in the gym.
I think the way, and I probably came to it in a skewed analytical mind. I just was always biasing the CrossFit stuff, which is also not wise. Like you have to have a balance there. But I continued to look at all of the numbers from the games and other competitions when there were sanctionals. A perfect example of this is in 2018 when there were, I think it was 12 sanctionals. Yeah. Only 4 of them had swimming, and it was only 4 total workouts. So it came out to 2.7% of the tests, whereas muscle ups were tested 26 times in a different variations.
Twice in some competitions.
Yeah, 2 in some competitions. Or snatches were tested 21 times over the course of the 12 competitions. So to me, I'm looking at it and I'm like, this person is just a really bad swimmer. Maybe they need to just work on it so they can stay alive and float and all that kind of stuff. But if someone's already 15th to 20th out of 30 people and it's going to take them 6 hours a week to get from 15th to 10th, I'd rather them get really good at the other things that are tested, kind of to Max's point. And this is something too that I've talked about in the past with this concept of separation value that the main concept is what movements separate you from the field, or what movements can you gain time or lose time against the field. But part of that is also the training value of those things. So this is I'm going to go off on a tangent.
Yeah, but hold on.
Sorry.
I don't disagree with this, though, because the original question,
I don't think this motherfucker's going to give...
In the past, there was a disagreement around this, but I think now he'd be arguing against himself.
Yeah, no, I don't mean this in an argument.
Okay.
We do. I do it. I admit that I'm the worst, and I've said stuff that's probably not true and fair.
And fought yourself.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like driving here, fighting myself in the car. Well, no, I think this. This is a complete tangent, but we can kind of bounce off of each other here. The way that we look at training as an organization is more dependent on what are the things that we can do in training to actually develop the athlete, both to improve their performance and then also to improve their longevity in the sport. Just keep them healthy long term. We talk about that all the time, but obviously performance is an extremely important part, especially for those that are trying to perform at, let's say, the games or semifinals. So in training, I'm thinking about separation value and what movements need to be trained the most, what movements will give us the biggest bang for our buck so that we can improve this athlete's performance on game day, either in the open, a quarterfinal, semifinal, the games. And sometimes that training looks different than just it being CrossFit, a Metcon mashup. And this is something that I've complained about from other programs in the past, or even things that we've done where it's just like, sure, we can throw Metcons at people all the time and make them quote unquote fit at certain things. But if it's not actually creating separation from them against the field, then we're doing them a disservice in the long term. So a good example of this would be something like the strict handstand push-up. That is a movement that I have identified both through the games and the open season process that is a huge separator in the sport. Those that are good at handstand push-ups can be worse at another movement in that testing body and still do better than someone that's better at all the other movements because strict handstand push-ups are such a bottleneck. A good example of this was the quarterfinal workout from this year. So someone that maybe is not great at
what
lunge.
Was the one?
The overhead walking lunge, front rack walking
30,
lunge.
20, 10.
Right.
Yeah.
Someone could not have good lunge capacity, and actually someone maybe that is not as quote unquote like cardiovascularly fit could beat someone that's much better in that workout because they have better handstand push-ups. And that's the case in most handstand push-up workouts that are strict, just because that's such a local limitation. So things like that, or GHD sit-up's a good example, a legless rope climb's a good example, some of the higher skills like muscle-ups and handstand walking. We can look at those things and say, okay, how can we train these in a setting that's going to help them get better at the kind of specific movement and like kind of like build up the local endurance of that movement, and then start to create tests that are testing those over the long haul.
And you started by looking at the data, right? So you went and said, hey, elite level athletes have to be able to do X amount of these and X amount of these to even be in the running, right?
Yeah. So we've collected the data from, however many years now that the Open has been going on. And that was kind of our starting point, right? Because originally it was like, you just have to do well in the Open and then maybe you can make a regional, and then it became like everything's changed over time. And now it's just like, what's top 10%? And then from quarterfinals, how do we get you into the top 120 in North America or wherever you're at and to get into semifinals? But yes, the answer to that question would be, we've collected all of that. We basically pulled all the data off the website, off of the Games website. So we have anybody that's posted a score that's on the Games website. We now have this collection on our own website that's just available to the coaches, where we can then look at the average reps per workout, the speed that they're doing them in the workout. So how fast does someone do toes to bar that's in first place versus 20th place, how many thrusters they're doing, how long the workouts are. So we've collected it on the most common movement combinations. We've also collected it on the time domains, which movements are tested more often, which combos are tested more often, and you can kind of go down the list. But that's a really good way for us to be able to kind of hedge our bets when we're going into a season, because now we can say, well, double unders have been tested every single Open. So that's something that we know that we should just be really good at. And those are the little things that kind of that we pay attention to when we're writing the training.
Yeah.
Thoughts so far when you hear all that?
Oh man, I had so many. I was just
sorry.
No,
I kept
good.
seeing you talking, and then I got distracted.
I was just listening in my head. Initial thoughts are, one of the issues, one of the hard things is that if you are talented enough and well-rounded enough, you can just throw randomness and metcons at people in massive quantities of volume, and they keep getting better, and then they perform well, and then that reinforces that the methods are good, which might not actually have anything to do with the methods. It could just have to do with the people that are working hard in any capacity. Because if you work hard and it's stupid, but you're young and you're talented, doesn't matter. You're still going to be good. And if even if you don't work that hard, or if you don't work that smart, you probably will be okay. That only will play out over a longer period of time. And you could kind of look at it and be like, okay, well, did this athlete reach their potential? Because then the difference is like, well, they'll finish 5th place, which is still going to make you famous and make it look like you're doing the right things. But could that 5th place person do things in a more methodical way and close the gap to 1st or 2nd? And there's a lot of work, and you have to do it in such a way that you could try to be bulletproof no matter what the testing body is, which I think is the hard part. Because I even think about another thought I had as he was talking was the data. And I'm like, yeah, we use the data, but then there's also other aspects than the data, is the training environment, the mindset that people bring into the competition at the highest level, the confidence. Did they get, there's a little bit of luck to like, did they get tweaked or they feel peaked at the right time? I think all of those things also play a role, and maybe the data becomes irrelevant if the testing architecture or the way that the sport, like, I think that it's a real silly thing. If I've looked at a lot of the other programs. Now I'm fucking talking and should I just keep ranting?
Oh, yeah, it's okay.
Go. Okay. So you look at the sport and you say, okay, if our goal, like, I'm an idealist, and I think being an idealist in the fitness that we're trying to gain is being able to be good at these 10 physical capacities. I don't really agree with calling them the energy systems, but just say be fit, whether you're sprinting in a real short time domain or whether you're going really long in a long time domain. So
you're saying you got an ideal.
Yeah. So those ideals, but they actually hold me back, or maybe potentially held my athletes back, because the testing body didn't meet the ideal, and it still doesn't meet the ideal. If you say, hey, you want well-rounded fitness, I was like, all right, well, if you're doing 20 hours of work a week and you're spending 1 hour of those weeks every week fucking sitting on a GHD sit-up machine and going backwards and coming back up and doing this one pattern, and that's 5% of your total training volume, it will actually probably set you up for success in CrossFit as a competitor, but it probably makes you less fit in terms of the capacity of your midline and your core to stabilize in different patterns. So you think, okay, yeah, your abs are real strong going into flexion and extension 200 times, but it is also strong lifting your leg up and kicking it out to the side, or kicking a soccer ball, or being able to rotate and throw something. But those things aren't tested, so you become less well-rounded and less fit by organizing the training to make you good at the sport, which is a weird, it's just a weird contradiction. And I don't know if there's a solution to it, but it's made me realize that as a coach, I need people like Brannen who think more data-driven, linear, his competitive instincts for, like, even just in sports, playing golf, playing CrossFit, playing football, his competitive instincts are different than mine. And I think my sporting background and combat background, it all kind of changes the way that you think about attacking a thing. And I don't think I attacked the thing of CrossFit potentially optimally in my earlier CrossFit career as a coach.
For the actual sport.
Yeah, for the actual sport. But I think in doing that, I set people up for longevity and and so now it's like, okay, well, the next problem is, how do you merge these two? How do you build a championship culture where you also can have a champion that persists for long periods of time, and you can replicate it at every level. You could replicate it with the bubble athletes. And that's that's just been my process, is just like recognize that no one knows what the fuck they're doing in this sport. Even if they're winning, they had no idea why they got to the way that they did. I think the one parallel in all the training communities of CrossFit is hard work, which is ironic that that's Matt Fraser's thing, but it's true. Everybody at the highest level is like, what do you do all day? I work out for 8 hours a day. They're all
a full-time job.
They're all working hard. And sometimes that's enough.
And it's not just the working out. It's
everything.
The whole thing.
It's the food obsession and the sleep and organizing your entire life to basically exercise at an elite level. Yeah. Everybody's doing it. Now it comes back to like, okay, well, what's determining winning and losing? I think it's silly to think it's program design or culture. It's the people doing it. Matt Fraser is a wildly intelligent, engineering-minded person who had access to great coaching, Olympian parents, and anybody and their mother wanted to help.
Snickers bars.
Yeah, Snickers bars.
Beta-alanine.
All right.
Yeah, so it's like, okay, well, this is what that variable of finding that human can then make it hard to analyze what good or bad training or what successful training or what good programming is, because it's like the ultimate trump card. It's like, oh, and Glassman used to say that, like, oh, if your training methods are better, then come win the test of fitness. And I'm like,
right.
Well, a really untalented person training really well is never going to be as strong as somebody who grew up with, you know, better genes and strength coaching growing up.
I want to stop you there because there are like 15 thoughts that I had. And
Should
I think
we go back and forth quicker?
No, I think there are just a couple good things that we can kind of like extrapolate on. So the first one is talking about the ideals. So let's talk about that first,
this
because
is so
I think
ironic. You guys fucking set me up.
That's why I said
I mean, it really is so true. So the ideal training methodology to be good at the sport is different than the ideal training methodology for health and wellness.
And that's where we go back to the conversation we've had a million times on this podcast, is separating the sport from the methodology. There's this weird
or write the sport in a way that's congruent with your methodology. No. I think that would be boring as shit, though.
Yeah, let's go back. The way that it's been tested over the last 15 years is different. Yeah. So the way that, even like the way that you would train, and you do a better job than anybody at mixing the two, of getting someone better for the sport, but also keeping them healthy. I certainly am trying to learn.
What was that? A word?
Yeah. Just looking at the way that you write someone's training program, it's definitely you're thinking through, how can I get them better at the sport, but also how can I keep them healthy? Yeah. I think most people are just thinking, how can I get them better at the sport? So like my overly analytical mind is always thinking like looking at the data and trying to drive someone's performance up, but that could lead to injury. So I have to find some balance from someone like you. But then there are people that maybe are just like all on the health and wellness side, and that's not going to get someone better at the sport. Yeah. So I think that's important to distinguish the two, that performance training for the sport is not health and wellness training for just fitness. Yeah. Right?
Performance, you would never play another sport. Like, you would never play football and be like, oh, I'm doing this for longevity.
Exactly.
I'm running at full speed and hitting people and like
10 concussions later.
Yeah. Oh my God. Speaking of which, remind me to come back to the slow-mo video of Alexis doing handstand push-ups. Because are we giving people concussions?
Man, it is.
My whole
they
fucking
their
head
heads.
jiggled. I was like, no way.
No, yes, it is.
Hold on. We'll circle back.
Okay. We'll circle back to that.
So I think that's just important to note, when people are thinking about their training and finding a program maybe that balances those two so that you're still driving both of them up is probably, for most people, unless you just want to be a champion and that's all that you care about. A long time ago, one of our first camps that we did here, I talked about Ronnie Lott, who was a safety for the 49ers, and this kind of story that is kind of like now just this kind of in the lore of 49ers history. He crushed his finger between two helmets in the Super Bowl one year. And they basically said, oh, you have to sit out the rest of the game. And he said, cut it off. So they cut his finger off and he came back in the game. Now, was that a stupid decision? Probably, for most people.
Did they win?
But I actually don't know if they won. I'm assuming that they did.
I'll look it up while y'all talk.
Okay.
But, the reason that I brought that story up is like, at some point, you have to make a decision of, is it worth hurting the potential of hurting my body to perform in a sport? And most people say yes to that, even if they're not that good. But some people may say no. And then you have to figure out, okay, well, how hard should I push? Should I go through like this knee pain or this elbow pain or shoulder pain? And so for the person out there that's listening, that's a decision that everyone has to make. Now, for those at the highest level of sport, sometimes they just say, I'm going to fight through this at the games, even though my hands are ripped and my shoulder feels like it's torn or whatever, because I want to win the games. And that's like awesome and honorable and whatever else we want to call it. They have that warrior mentality. But for most of us, there are times of the year that we probably should pull back and say, I'm going to take care of my body a little bit more than maybe I otherwise would, because I want to make sure that I can do this for the long haul.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like everybody is going to have to make health sacrifices to perform at the highest level. But the problem is it's a risk-reward scenario. And I think of it like dumb training is maximizing risk that is potentially not giving you incremental gains. So you're trying to figure out, well, like, what's the little amount of risk I need to take to make sure that I can stay healthy and feel good for the rest of my life, and I'm not going to be crippled because of dumb decision making, versus not doing enough to actually be at the highest level. And that's a delicate balance, and I think it's different for everybody. I think some athletes are really volume tolerant. Some athletes, are getting into this sport without a big training background in another sport. Some athletes got better coaching early, so their movement quality is a little safer. But at some point in a competition, you probably are going to be like, oh man, this is really tight, or, this doesn't feel good, or especially at the games, because it's so much. And I think at that point, you have to have a different headspace. You got to not be thinking about your body. Sure. You got to not be thinking about the pain. So it's a weird balance. Is like, how do you get people in and out of those headspaces? How do you get them to realize, like, okay, you just finished a period of time where you gave two shits about your body and your long-term future because this moment was the most important thing to you, and doing the thing that you were training for all year in that moment, which potentially could, hurt you and mess you up. You got to be able to be in that headspace that, okay, now you're at war. But when you're preparing for war, I think that's where I have the problem, is that people are preparing for war by constantly going into battle. And then you have like people, this is a metaphor, but you just have people that are like battle wounded from doing too much, by getting to that threshold too often, by pushing too deep. Their knees are sore because they did too much at too high of percentages because they were rushing
a detriment to their progress.
Yeah. So then you have like that methodology of volume, pain, beating the mind up, doing crazy shit in the gym, staying up into midnight and like doing Navy SEAL training. It does callous your mind and make you better.
Who the shit's doing that?
I mean, there's a lot of coaches out. I mean, especially in the earlier days. Now I think people's training methods are kind of more normalized, and it's not really anything and everything. Now it's like predictable because we've seen the CrossFit Games so many times, and people want their rope climbs and their GHDs. Like, imagine, just imagine that the new person takes over CrossFit Games this year and they show up and they're like, we're going to go through the whole games. There's only going to be one running event and we're not going to use a barbell to test strength. Think about how much civil unrest there would be from CrossFit and from all the people that have been doing their barbell progressions and all this structured bullshit, because not bullshit, this structured training to get you better at this supposedly random sport. But if we said, okay, we're going to measure strength differently this year, we're going to do a max vertical, a broad jump, 100-yard dash, a max object a 50-yard yoke carry, you could totally change the type of person that would be strong at the CrossFit Games.
Mad.
Yeah, but think about how many people would be stronger in that testing body because they're strong as shit, but they just don't have a good squat. Right. And so like, it's like, all right, well, you don't have a good squat, you can't be good at CrossFit because there's 700 squats at the games. Or Mike brought up that time, what happens if we say that we're not going to squat at all? We're just going to do a whole test without squatting.
I keep going back to, we should just say this is the sport. The sport is doing this barbell shit. Like what you see, that is the sport.
I would love that.
Mixing it with the
unknown and unknowable.
And the fitness thing. Like I get why that's fun, but I feel like all these problems only arise between this weird trying to mix them.
Yeah, the concept of fittest on earth.
Big Ron did not get the Super Bowl win in 1985. However, there's good news. There's good news. In 1988 and 1989, he did get
there we go.
Yeah, so he's a four-time champ.
He crushed his finger and then didn't win.
He can't fucking put one of his rings on one hand.
Well, he has as many fingers as he does rings.
That he could put it on.
Yeah.
So the other thing that you mentioned is the cream rises to the top, which, I know people hate to hear that, but it is true. And so I think the way that we should judge programs is more about which athletes are they developing, or how many athletes are they actually developing in the sport. And one of the things that I think I'm most proud of, I've said this before on the podcast, is our intermediate program in Compete, our online program that we have, where we are taking people that don't have muscle ups or on the bubble, don't have handstand push-ups, don't have handstand walking, name the skill, and we actually have a program that is written to help develop them into an RX athlete. Yeah. Whereas most programs, you kind of throw them in, and even if it's a beginner program, it's just Metcons all the time. And yeah, sure, some people can pick it up. You mentioned in the past where the first time you try to muscle up, you could do it. But think about how many people try muscle ups for years and years and can't do them, but they're still banging their heads against the wall in these programs where they're not getting any better. And so
some of those people just have to bang their heads because
I agree.
They're early on CrossFit. They want to do what the other people are doing.
Yeah.
I want to say, hold on, so they get to the intermediate where they want to do it.
Can I just jump into that? One thought though is I jumped in and did a ring muscle up on my first time doing it. I was 24 years old and just got introduced to CrossFit, but I also had been structured training for 10 years. I had been doing bench press progressions for football, power clean progressions. I didn't know what a squat clean or what a snatch was, but I could still power clean 315 pounds in high school. Like, you have this strength that you cultivated from very boring, very linear progressions, from learning technique, from learning how to brace, doing planks, and doing some of the fundamental stuff. And almost every athlete you see at the highest level did that. They were a gymnast growing up. Some of them started now with teen CrossFit, but they went through on-ramp programs. They didn't try to accelerate it because they were 10 years old when they started. So it wasn't like, hey, we're going to do muscle ups in this, workout, because it was like these people were 10. They could barely hang. Yeah. So they almost went through the monotonous, boring progressions properly by nature of the fact that they started at 10 years old. When you come in as an adult and you see your peer group doing something, you're like, well, for you, based on what you've done with training and based on your exercise, you're looking at like 5 to 6 to 10 years of commitment to try to do that thing you have in a Metcon. So you have this weird choice. Step away from the community fun and feeling like you're going to meet pukey and fuck yourself up in the workout and get that dopamine rush from the pain and from the discomfort and the pride of working hard, and do these boring basic strength progressions where you're working on L-sits and hollow holds and the fundamentals that are going to allow you to get to higher levels here, or you just cap your own ceiling and participate. Sadly, I think a lot of people take that choice of saying, well, I just want to be doing it. So instead of actually working to get a muscle up, I'm okay training for the next 10 years to just always do hanging knee raises or banded strict pull-ups. Yeah. And it's fine. I mean, if that just means that the priority is not actually getting better, it's having a community of people to work out hard with.
That's the issue that I have, right? So here's a perfect example. We have people that sign up for our online program, Compete, and then they cancel it the same day that they sign up. And there's a little thing in there that says, what's the reason you're canceling? And the people that are honest, they just simply say, this is not what I'm looking for. Yeah. And my response in my head is, well, how do you know? Yeah. How do you know it's not what you're looking for? Now, going back to your example, if it's just someone that wants to have fun, they don't care about progress, sure, go and do whatever you're quote unquote looking for. Do the thing that looks fun, 5-minute AMRAP, rest 2 minutes, 5-minute AMRAP, bash your head against the wall, whatever, go and sweat, okay? If you're someone that's signing up for a program...
this man's on a roll.
You're
I'm being serious. I can feel it.
It's one of those things that has really bothered me, because if you're legitimately looking for progress and you want to get better at this thing that you say is your passion or your hobby, and then because it doesn't look fun to you or it doesn't look exciting to you, you decide, I'm just going to cancel, you don't even give it a chance. So the question that I would have for those people then is, wherever you've been, are you getting progress? Whatever program you're following, like this should be the self-test that you're doing.
Well, I think that's just humans. Humans say they want a lot of shit that when you give it to them, they really don't want it.
You know the Ronnie quote.
What's the Ronnie quote? Oh yeah, the Ronnie. Not this Ron. The other.
Yeah. The real my finger.
Ron. No. Say it. I forgot. It's everybody.
Everybody wants to be a bodybuilder, but no one wants to lift these heavy ass weights.
Yeah. Everyone wants to be a CrossFit Games athlete, but no one wants.
I mean, I think you see that in classes. That people in classes will say, I want to do this, blah blah, and then you give it to them, and they're like, just
Yeah. I used to. This circles back to like thinking about. I think about, I'm supposed to be a leader for Training Think Tank. I'm supposed to build a community. I'm supposed to be a business owner. So I'm supposed to think about the growth of all these things. And then in order to do that, you have to think, well, who are my competitors in the market? Who am I competing against? Who is coaching other people? What are they doing? What are they doing better than me? And you go through all this evaluation, and I feel like every community is going to have a certain type of people that vibes with what they do. And I think of it like in any market, there's like 10% on one end, and then there's 10% on the other end. And then there's the 80% in the middle. And the 80% of people in the middle are really just going to sway with popularity. They're not going to actually have well-reasoned opinions. They're not going to have they're not going to have the same passion that maybe somebody in that top 10% that really, like, they really care about this stuff. They really care about their body. They're really digging deep into what they're doing and how it feels and whether it's making them better, whether they're learning things. Then there's that other 10% that's just like kind of hopeless for whatever reason. It's not judgy. They just like, they don't want to get better. They don't want to think about getting better. They don't want to, they don't want to push themselves. That other 80% just sways. And I feel like the popularity game of trying to do things similar to match it or to try to get that type of pop culture driven person could be good for a business and the size of a community, but it's actually not really what I want to build the community on. I do want to build it with those 10% of people. Like there's still 10% of the intermediate group that does get in there and they're like, I understand that it's sometimes hard to sit over here and shape my body in this weird position and hold it for a minute and then rest a minute and do it 5 times and basically go through 45 minutes of like fundamental gymnastics work that you would have a 10-year-old girl doing in a gymnastics class. And it kind of sucks to be here while my friend's swinging on the rings and posting videos and getting a following and getting paid to do this and being put on a pedestal.
Free
for being
fit
great.
aids.
Yeah. But the path to getting there is always going to be through that kind of same thing for 90% of people. The people that are at that highest level, either they're super talented or they already just did that work in some capacity. So there's no getting around it. And I feel like we'll just keep having that same message about progress, about training, about trying to figure out the balance of pushing yourself and trying to be an elite performer, but also being mindful of the fact that your life extends beyond that. And I think that it'll just keep kind of growing organically to find those types of people. So it's almost like when those people come in and come out beforehand, and I'm like, good. Like if your character was so quick that you made your decision to come in and your decision to stay was solely based on how it looked and not based on whether or not it got you better and you enjoyed the culture and the community of people that you were doing it, you wouldn't have fit in anyway.
For sure.
And that's with anything. It could be about guitars, drumming. It's like a lot of people say they want to be able to, play a guitar this way, and then they're not going to put in the time. And, to some degree, it's like it's okay if you're honest with yourself that that's who you are. If you're honest that, hey, I'm Mr. just wants to do a hard Metcon guy, and I saw your shit, and, that didn't match what I wanted, and that's fine as long as you're not then going to say, I want to be able to get this skill that I don't have yet. As long as you're honest about it, it's cool.
For those people,
I think you should be able to do whatever you want.
Yeah.
For those people that legitimately say that my goal is progress, I would challenge them then that are listening to this, are you making that? And including those that are in our program, because if you're not, then you either need to
challenge
talk
yourself to say, are you lying to yourself?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. And also, I would challenge yourself to really define.
3 challenges.
Yeah. Define progress in this sport because it's really hard. You can be like, I'm getting stronger. My snatch is going up, my back squat. Like those ones are really easy to keep getting better, especially as beginners. And if you're on a good structured, like, hey, you're on a squat cycle, generally speaking, you're going to keep seeing those percentages go up if you're disciplined with it. When you're measuring it in the quarterfinals, it's like, okay, well, if you finish 120th this year, but you were 70th last year, did you actually regress, or did you just get kind of lucky with the testing structure and your things last year because you're not even doing the same things? So I have this, something relevant about Last Chance. I had a conversation with Sarah, and we're talking about progress, how she feels about the training and what got better. And one of the things was that she wanted structured. Like in the off season of this year, she wasn't competing. So we were just trying to rehab her and get her better. So we set a testing architecture up of the things that she wanted to get better at, like some running metrics, some rowing metrics, some gymnastics metrics. And those were kind of our framework for guiding testing. And she saw the linearity of those things getting better, and then it gave her confidence. Then we get into the season and it goes major chaos because you have competition for, Friday in the open, a competition workout's going to come out. We don't know what's in it, so we can't really decide what progression's going to go on Saturday or on Wednesday, because if I'm doing a squat progression where there's 1,000 squats on Wednesday and then she's coming in and she's got a squat again on Friday and she's in the middle of ACL rehab, it makes it hard to get that structure. So that testing body of things that we can make that are linear starts to shrink down to like 10% of the program, and the rest of it becomes more varied and chaotic and Metcon-y and less training and more testing, and it just starts to emulate the sport. Then you get through it and you're like, well, I don't even know if I feel like I got better through the season, because you stop actually doing those linear progressions. So I think it's important for every athlete to define what is progress? Is progress getting stronger? Is it getting better at certain skills? Is it getting better in the competition? I think the highest competitive athletes are focused on whether their performance at the games is ranking higher, especially when you're coming up. Like if you were like, well, last year I took 12th. This year I want to do better. You can actually make that gain and be getting better according to your variables, but not actually be getting more fit because you got the right tests and now maybe you're more experienced, so you're confident going into it. So there's so much chaos to evaluate, and it makes it even more chaotic and harder to coach and harder to be a sane athlete in this sport because it's always different, right? Yeah. Like I think that's kind of one of the ways I agree with you that we need some sort of structured definition. Somebody made a comment about the IF3. I think that's what James Fitzgerald was doing.
Okay.
I think it's a more structured CrossFit competition.
They were saying that had a higher likelihood to succeed. Is that what the comment was?
I think they said it had a higher likelihood to succeed as being an Olympic sport because we had a conversation that said, how could you put CrossFit in the Olympics when you don't know what CrossFit is?
It would have to be structured.
So just be very clear on this. It's not a shot at what the CrossFit Games currently is. It's more of like, well, let's just define what they are, and are we mixing it with health and longevity, or is it this is the fucking sport?
Yeah. Well, the irony of it is like the leaders of the internal CrossFit culture, the level 4 coaches, the people that are judging on the CrossFit Games floor, they're not training like that. A lot of them are not competing and not competitive, and they're doing CAP programming, which is like, there's nothing wrong with training like that. It's just a whole different mindset of being like, I'm trying to step into the open or quarterfinals next year and be as good as possible at pushing myself to max effort, where that's a whole different training headspace and it's harder to maintain. So I feel like if you're going to do that and your culture is already reflecting that, and some of the leaders, like I've heard Spieler talk about that before, are already saying it, then I feel like splitting it off and being like, okay, fitness at a ideological level can be unknown and unknowable. If you say, hey, you just want to really know how fit and athletic someone is take them somewhere where they've never done something. You've never been on a surfboard, and throw them out in the water with a little bit of instruction and see how fast they can pick it up and survive and learn that skill. The person that does that faster is probably more fit. Or you put them in a survival situation, you drop them somewhere and they got to carry one thing all the way to another area, and it's something they haven't practiced and haven't done before. It's like, okay, if you're training properly according to the ideology, then you'll succeed in those things. But that would be very different from what we're doing right now. Is how many times have people practiced the things that they're supposed to be unknown and unknowable? It's like Rich Froning has probably done like 100,000 squat snatches over the course of the last 10 years. It's not unknown. It's completely repeatable. And that's a different skill set. That's a skill set of saying, who can refine this thing with a ton of training and practice to the nth degree, but it's completely not unknown and unknowable.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, and Chris, you can ask the next question in a second. But actually,
moving on
from the data,
this all the time.
From the data we've collected, the movement combinations and selections in the open are actually extremely predictable to this point. So I'm interested to see what happens over the next couple of years if they can look at it themselves and then change those predictions.
Yeah.
But what we've guessed over the last couple of years has been like these combos are the exact same. So I'm interested to see if they change it.
I think it's going to go in the opposite direction. I think that they're going to try to make the sport more congruent.
Dead bugs for time?
Yeah, they're going to make the sport more congruent with the training methodology. Like I think it'll become, even looking at quarterfinals this year was way simpler. Or not quarterfinals, last chance, right? There was a 2K row and a handstand walk. It wasn't like handstand walk, double under, row, 4 rounds for time, transition in and out.
I would have loved if they scored that differently, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, why not score both of those things? So there's an extra score
save that for our last chance
Okay,
to talk,
sorry.
which will be in another video. You'll see that a little bit later.
Sorry, Chris.
All right, what's the next question?
All right, so I want to talk about some topical stuff. And if you don't like any of these, then just say forget it. So one of the things is our team officially made it to the CrossFit Games.
Let's go.
Whoop.
I don't want to talk about it.
You don't want to talk about it?
Just kidding.
Any thoughts on that, about the Cheater McCheaterson team? Or
I don't know much about the Cheater McCheatersons. I know that there was multiple teams, I think, from
I mean, we had
multiple semifinals.
Yeah, multiple. So I won't comment on that. That could be another topical thing you can talk about. I'm I'm just proud of the team. I find it like it's so funny that there's these super teams or these teams of people that are 20 years old and they're in school and they're full-time training, and I just think about our team and it makes me kind of chuckle that Mike is
30-something-year-olds.
Mike and Brandy, masters athletes, Mike and Brandy with having a kid and balancing that, and Mia and Chris. It's just it's such an interesting group of people that I love so much, that I think reflects longevity and competing with purpose that maybe isn't tied directly to winning, and they execute so well. Like, this is a thing that could probably go to Last Chance. Watching people perform up to their potential and do really well, but not score well because they just don't have the tools that would be required to do well at, like, they're not going to podium at the CrossFit Games, and that's not the expectation that they're going there to podium. But watching them and watching how well they execute, how little no reps they get, how they break things up, it looks like a well-oiled machine that's just not like it. You don't have the engine, and
it's a little older machine. It's not a Tesla.
Yeah. But all that makes me think is, like, I watch some of these teams and I'm like, oh God, you need like structured coaching. You need a leader on the floor that communicates, and you watch them, they're just moving so much faster and they have to take less breaks. I think there are some teams that I've seen that are kind of in that like 3rd to the 10th at the games that could make way bigger threats if they could execute like our team.
For sure.
But it's just like, that just makes me enjoy watching them, because it's I don't know, it's like a point of pride to watch how much work goes into trying to keep them competitive with all of those realities. Like, no professional athletes really on the team.
Yeah, it was fun to watch them at Syndicate because there were some workouts that they knew were going to be problematic, and they were. They ended up in 6. Obviously, we find out a team that cheated, but they still executed almost perfectly. There was a couple errors on one of the workouts that maybe caused them a couple places, but that is, again, to your point, that's what makes them special. And it is interesting to me. I'm interested to see what happens to the team competition over the next decade. Yeah. If teams make it like a professionalized sport where every team is practicing together all the time, all their synchro is perfect, all their calls and communication are perfect, then it will be a really fun competition, because it won't just be Rich's team running away with it, because they have 4 individual games athletes. The 2 females they have are just incredible to watch. They're so super talented. But what if there are 20 teams like that, and now all of them are just what will be the differentiator will be the communication and the teamwork.
Yeah, right now it doesn't play enough of a role. I think talent, if you put 4 very talented people out there, their fitness can offset. I'm not saying that about Mayhem. Mayhem is a polished machine as well. Yes,
they are, very much.
They're
so good.
I'm not saying they're not. I'm just saying that you don't see 4 elite level individuals on a team that are all kind of well polished, where then I think execution, detail, coaching, getting people to game day feeling peaked and primed, communication in the time of adverse situations. Like if one person on a team has a breakdown or gets pushed to their threshold in the middle of the workout, you're 4 times more likely for that to happen in a workout when you have 4 people. Like said, that somebody has their bad workout or blows up in a workout. And then it's about figuring out, well, was that the leader that had the breakdown? If it was the leader, then like, can they communicate while they're in that state? Is it going to have bleed down effects on the other? Do they have a backup plan that somebody else takes over the calls and communication? But that stuff I don't think will get refined or play out for
it's so years. Fun watching teams fall apart.
I know, it really is.
No,
there are a couple of Syndicate that really melts it.
I take it back. It's not fun, but you watch it and you're just like, it's like watching a train. You're just like,
I don't know.
You can't stop.
It is kind of fun
they're
for
falling
me.
apart out there.
You have fun doing it?
I mean,
what if it's people you like?
No, not if I like them.
It's only strangers.
Yeah, I don't know them.
And I our teams.
Yeah.
All right, so what do you guys think about this? If we took 2 games males and 2 games females, they didn't get to practice at all, and we put them into the games against Mayhem, how would it shake out?
They would get crushed.
Who would get crushed?
The 4
individuals.
The made-up team we just made.
Yeah, made-up team.
I only say that if the testing stays the same.
Yeah, true.
Because
team testing.
Well, I think Froning. I went and did my level 1 up there. I don't know if I'm imagining this, but I think he has a big bob to practice on, or a big sliding rig type of thing to practice on. they have multiple worms that they practice with. So assuming that those things come out, if you have a team of 4 people that's a similar level that have practiced it, like I think I've watched Travis do the worm before with people, and like it's a whole different movement pattern. It's not, there's so much more like rotation and twisting, and you got to time it with the other people on the bag. Otherwise, it's like one person pulls it and the other person gets all the tension from the bag slapping. And those are things that like a little bit of practice can go a long way. But I don't think that you can compete on that shit without practicing.
So how many practice sessions would it take to at least be
I think you could probably prepare them.
I mean, that dude has years of managing the other 3 people on his team. You're not going to beat that.
Yeah, I think you could probably make them competitive with a month of practice. And I only say this, I feel like I might get heat for this. If there's max strength testing, I feel like Froning could potentially be a liability placing wise if you had all 4 athletes as strong as the other 3. Like I think I heard Rich in a video saying that he hadn't snatched 275 in like multiple years. So let's just say there's a max that comes up and he hits 265 to 275, and you have 2 games level athletes that can both hit 290 or 285 and 300 or something like that. That averages out. There might be that you might start to create some of those workouts where there's gaps. Whereas I feel like Mayhem as a team will probably finish 1, 2, 3 on almost every workout, but maybe there's one of those like little things that's just because Rich is a little bit older as an athlete and a little bit less fit, maybe at the max strength and max speed tests versus a current individual male athlete.
I just think it'd be so much fun to throw
hate for that.
You are going to get hate.
I know you guys
I'm over here. Don't you tarnish the name of Rick Froning Jr.?
I would love to see, they just have to like throw together teams of individual games athletes, and they had to do like a 5 workout test or something like that. So it's 2 males, 2 females, and they don't get any practice. They got to go out in the field and do it. That'd be a lot of fun.
I think it would be a lot of fun because I think you'd see really good athletes getting fucking
exactly,
like breaking down. Like, I hate the worm. I'm never doing team again.
I want to see them melt.
What you got? Other topical? things?
Some more topical things. So you had Homeboy who cheated.
Which Homeboy?
Is it how you say it? Joyal?
I don't know how to say it.
Yeah. And the main thing I wanted to ask you guys about that one was when people move up, it doesn't take into account the scoring throughout the weekend.
Yeah.
So it's like,
it doesn't?
I don't think so, right? You tell me. That was my assumption.
No, I think they just drop that person and move up.
I think they just drop and move, which makes sense because, but I think the reason so this guy came out and he admitted to just taking a substance rather than saying it was contaminated subs. Yeah. And so props to him for doing that. Part of me just kind of like, it still sucks you cheated. I'm not going to like hug you for admitting it. It's cool that you did, but I feel like the moment is ripe for someone to be honest.
Yeah.
Like
because there's been
2 years ago, I don't think this same guy has the testicular fortitude to step up and say he did it. I think the moment is fucking ripe for someone to get a big hug for being the person to just say, I didn't take subs or contaminated subs. So props for doing it. But the thing is like, it affects the scoring for the whole weekend. Yeah. So it's like, fuck you, because if you weren't there, everything changes, right? Or am I wrong?
No, I agree.
It would. We'd have to look at the leaderboard though and actually
figure out how people approach the events. Like, hey, Homeboy has this, and I need, and maybe if you're in a lane next to him. Yeah. I feel like it affects the whole weekend.
And if you're in of the final heat and somebody is, way ahead of you and you're not going to try to catch them, you might just throttle back. If that one person, or you go to chase them and you blow up, and then that takes you from 2nd to 10th because you blew up. And if that person was not on drugs, making the race faster than his actual physiology would allow normally, I could see that.
I'm gonna.
What's the question? Just kind of a discussion.
If I was right, that that was my assumption.
It definitely affects things. I think that there were a lot of people that didn't forgive Ricky immediately for that same reason, because that year he came out, he was just crushing things. Like there was a cyclocross race that he just crushed, and I was like, wow, this guy's fitness is off the charts good. But that would change the whole psychology of the entire experience if that outlier wasn't there.
So, like, I guess here's another question then. So you can either bump everybody up, or would you take him out and readjust the points?
Yeah.
That would probably be more fair.
I think that would be more fair.
I think that'd still provide some sketchiness.
Well, he won the first 2 workouts.
I remember I watched Atlas Games because I was home and I wasn't
The cheater won the first 2?
Yeah.
The cheater.
Yeah, he won workout 1, workout 2, and then he finished third in workout 6. Those are all top 3 finishes. And the reason I say that is first place gets more points. The spread is bigger from first to second than everything
and he got
else.
it in the first 2, so that affects the psychology of everybody else.
Yeah.
And, you stole what could have been a good, you go home and eat dinner that night feeling like I'm on top of the world because I got first. Yeah. You robbed that of someone else.
Yeah.
Connor was 10 points back from Austin Spencer, who is now going.
Yeah.
So that 10 points could easily be made up because of the first to second.
Yeah.
That's interesting. You'd have to run the numbers, and Connor didn't have a second place, so I don't think that would have mattered. But
where is he somewhere else? Is there like a 7th? Is there some place where
he finished 7th in workout 6, which
where was
Nycolas
Connor?
finished 3rd. Connor finished 7th, and Nycolas, the guy that popped, finished 3rd. So I don't know what the points spread would be there.
I don't know if I could predict how the math would play out, or if there's any
tricky
scenario where.
That's a really good question, though. I think that's something that they'll have to think about long term. I would just say,
what if they drug tested you? Nah, never mind. That's dumb. I was going to say
beforehand.
The week before.
Yeah.
I actually think it's pretty cool that he admitted it because it's so easy now. Everyone's saying that it's their tainted substances.
It's cool that he admitted it.
And people need role models and ideals. So if somebody comes out and they start saying it, but I don't know, what does that mean? It's just like, if you get caught cheating, just make sure that
I'm not giving him a hug either. I'm not saying that.
No,
it's just nice that someone finally doesn't lie about
it
because everyone else is
it's nice that you didn't lie.
Yeah.
But like I said, I feel like it's so easy. Like the moment was ripe for someone to finally take that on.
Yeah. Or really it's you made the decision to stop lying about it when you got caught.
But even that takes a big step. It would be easier just to simply say,
I don't know how it happened.
My protein powder, just like everyone else is saying. And it's just like, how is it that there are hundreds of other athletes that are taking protein powder and they're not popping? Maybe take their protein powder or just follow the rules. It's like, is that what this appeals process is for the team? Let's say the syndicate team.
I think so.
They are now banned from the sport for so many years, but if they win their
just
appeal,
him.
Okay, just him.
I think. I don't know.
But if he wins his appeal, he'll be able to. It doesn't matter.
He'll reduce the sanction, I think, to 2 years, but they won't be able to compete.
Right. Yeah. Because still he was taking the substance.
Here's an idea I had. Did I run this team ban thing by you at some point about penalizing?
Yes.
Okay. Brandon, some of your thoughts on this. I don't know why I even came up with this, but what if when someone pops on a team, you set up a structure where it's like the whole team has to pay. And so the guy who pops he's banned 4 years, right? As is. Now the other people are banned pending them paying a penalty. And the penalty needs to be steep. And so my hypothetical was $2,500 per person. And once they pay that, their slate's clean, they're fine. But then what this does is it makes it where you wouldn't want to be on a team with someone you thought might be sketchy. Now, you can never know for sure. So the opposite side of that coin is it makes you, if you're the sketchy person, not want to fuck the other three. Because if I get popped now, my friend Brannen, blah, 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 they're all going to have to pay $2,500 or I'm going to screw their careers. So there's some sort of mechanism at play that makes it where it's like a team thing and it provides like I don't know. What do you thought?
I love the idea. I just think that's ruthless for the teammates because, do you think they knew? Do you think any of those teams knew that their teammates were taking?
No. But that was what I said about the other side of the coin. Now the guy who is cheating knowingly has to sit there and think, do I want to fuck these people?
I think those people that are cheating
and if he does
would still
that,
be okay with that. Like they know the risk already, and so they're just like, screw them.
But now you could be like, fuck that guy, and everybody
agrees, fuck that guy.
Yeah, I think there's a percentage of people that are
or girl
cheating.
Could be a girl cheating. I don't want to be discriminatory.
Definitely are. I think there's a percentage of those people that are cheating that are like actively looking up what's banned, how do I get around it, when am I going to be tested, when will it be out of my system, and they're actively trying to cheat. And I do think there's a number of people, probably a much smaller amount, that is either just not sure. Like I would bet that there's people that are naive enough that they meet somebody at a gym who's really strong. They're doing CrossFit and they're like, hey, I take this. It's not steroids and it helps me get stronger.
I don't give a shit.
They
Fuck
take
that.
it. But it's different in my head because it's an intellectual gap versus a moral gap. I feel like at
this point, if you're at that level and someone's like, yeah, I got this thing, you then go, okay, let me look it up.
Yeah, but that's not you being a rational and well thought out.
You're just saying someone's not educated enough.
Yeah, they don't know. They've never, I mean, there are some people that participate in this sport that probably are not reading the rule books and not reading, and they're just trusting the people that are around them.
That's fine.
And if somebody's around them,
you get in trouble.
I want to be.
I am okay with it being in trouble. I'm just not as morally. I'm not judging them for being a cheater. I'm more like forgive them. It's more about the forgive them for forgive them for they not know what they do or whatever the quote is.
I want to be as empathetic as you, but I just cannot.
but all my shit talk just then was against a guy who said he knowingly did it. Yes. I wasn't talking about anyone who was in that other one.
I just don't think people are as stupid as they want you to believe.
I think if I was that stupid person, I would be like, oh, damn. Well, I'm stupid. Sorry I didn't read the rule book. I guess I'll do my penalty. I wouldn't be like crying about it, I don't think.
Yeah. Maybe I say stupid. I just, whatever. I mean, it's judgmental a little bit, but there are people that I meet sometimes and you hear them talk and you hear them talk through what they're doing and you're like, oh, it's just like not a well-formed opinion and thought. Like you just don't have a good rational mind.
That's what's wrong with our society.
And sometimes those people are great athletes because I feel like thinking in and of itself can take away energy. And like, I know in sports when I feel like I find the zone and like, I don't find it often, but you can get into a rhythm where things just like are happening. Your mind is so uninvolved. You're not thinking about it. Like if you're golf swing feels good or your snatch rhythm feels good or your muscle up timing, like all these cues that you've gotten your whole life, like, oh, your core needs to stay tucked and all of that goes away. And you're kind of just like floating through the movement, not really even conscious of it happening. So I feel like sometimes when people are not gifted, whether it's biology or whatever, with a brain that is active and having these thoughts and very analytical, sometimes being dumb can almost make you a better athlete. I did air quotes because I feel like it sounds judgmental, but
I was just meant for the audio only people.
Yeah. Just being non-intellectual can almost be good for being an athlete. It doesn't mean all athletes are that way because I've met some athletes who are genius IQ level. And I think like, I know Fikowski calls himself the professor, but I've had conversations with him and you can tell like this is a very smart,
Oh, I thought you were about to go the opposite way. I've had conversations with him. He's dumb as a rock.
I mean, you could just tell by the talks that he does after a workout.
Yeah. And some athletes you meet and you're like, oh, you're outsourcing your thinking. Like you can't think.
And nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. But I feel like for those people that are in that bubble, if they make a mistake by not thinking about their actions because somebody they're trusting is morally corrupt, I feel like the penalties sometimes are, or like the social outrage that happens is unjustified. For me, it's more so were you actively knowledgeable and trying to bypass the system for your own personal gain while screwing everybody else over, then we should be more fierce with those people. It's like, you should never have a chance to come back if you get caught in that level of corruption.
But you don't know that if everyone is saying it was a tainted supplement.
Yeah, most people
there's one guy that's been honest about it over the last 2 years. Sure.
I mean, all of it, I think, could be. It's like if we're going to really make this a sport, I feel like it would need to be better testing. Like,
do you think that the sport's like the Tour de France back in the day?
Does that mean you're saying that there's tons of people who are on?
They had to drop to 17th place?
No, I don't. Yeah. Just because I know
that's what people are saying now.
Enough of that's going to keep happening. I feel like too, because even the people that I know are clean, that are operating at the highest level, and I don't know for sure. I mean, they could be like sneaking shit, behind my back and holding up the lie to everyone, but I'm pretty certain that there's a large number, and the people that I've worked, Travis and Noah specifically, for years have been clean. And
they've been tested.
Yeah, they've been tested multiple times. So there's got to be a lot of other ones that are at that level too. But I do think that there's a bigger number than people think. I think I've heard people be like, oh, it's not the games athletes, it's all the bubble athletes. And I'm like, I'm sure some of the games athletes. Right. And I bet you some people's heroes are too. But I don't know. The only way to fix that would be have a very comprehensive drug testing policy that was testing way more regularly and way more randomly. They say, oh, I'm tested all the time. And I'm like, yeah, but you could go like months in the off season without getting testing, months.
Right.
And That's way
what
too
I've
long.
always wondered is how much the benefit, like I would be more curious to see how many people have ever done them. Period.
Yeah.
You know, because what if like, you know, you were like at my high school, all the baseball guys were on it. It was like, and they openly talked about it. And it was like, it was for some reason that baseball culture has like
Mark McGuire time.
Yeah. Well, yeah. A little after, but yeah. So maybe they got off after high school or maybe they did college, but then after that, maybe they did quit and then they found CrossFit. My question, I guess, is what kind of benefit does that carry over into now their CrossFit career, even though they're completely off?
A ton.
It does?
Yeah, a ton.
I mean, my assumption was yes, it does.
Yeah,
but
it does. I mean, there's some research on it.
So I'd rather know how many people who are in it who, yes, they're not currently on and they're not actively cheating.
But years ago, they were.
You know, back in another life, they were
I bet you that
on
number
steroids.
is way higher.
Yeah,
man, we should
because everyone's so locked in on who's currently cheating. I don't really. I mean, I would like to know that too, but I'd like to know more.
You should get on and we do a little documentary.
Oh, that would be fucking hilarious.
At this point, talked about it, but who would film it and edit it?
I'll do it. I'm not competing.
I say I want to do it, but I really don't want to.
Yeah, you take a lot of risk, man.
When it comes to time to actually having to flip that switch, I don't want to do
whatever. Lance was taking some EPO. I would love to try
just to know.
Yeah, obviously, I'm not
what does that one do?
Yeah. It's like a something to do with red blood cells.
And it increases your blood cell count, right?
More
that's what the biker man was on.
Yeah.
But what was his name?
He was also on testosterone. And
what was biker man name?
Lance Armstrong.
Lance Armstrong. Yeah. Do some like tests. And then whatever the dosage is, again, we need Evan for this. Yeah. And then retest at the end of 12 weeks or 16 weeks and see. Because they were saying they were 10% faster, 10 to 15% faster, which is insane. People don't think that's a lot. That is so much in a workout.
I know so many people that have done drugs. So many people. And played football with people that have done drugs.
Oh, for sure.
And I've seen... It's not even... And so there's hyper responders to training. Like Mike or me. If I lift weights, I get bigger and more muscular and stronger almost immediately. Like in a 1 month period of time, I can transform the way that my muscle bellies look really quickly. And I've always kind of been like that. I don't have that same adaptation to endurance work though. So if I do endurance work and I stop for 2 weeks, it's like, all right, I feel like you never did 5 years behind now. I feel like I'm going to have a heart attack while I'm pedaling. So that's like, we call it a hyper responder to certain training adaptations. There's certain people that are hyper responders to drugs. And I've seen some of those people like go from like relatively normal to taking a little bit of testosterone and getting to like national level strength metrics in less than a year from being like an average Joe.
It's incredible.
Now that doesn't happen for everybody, but if you just think like, okay, you get somebody who's pretty talented, pretty strong, pretty good at all the gymnastic skills, but they just can't budge a 225 snatch. But if they did snatch 275, they'd be able to make the CrossFit Games. And they're a hyper responder. You give them a little bit of that, they get to that level really quickly, and they can. So the incentive is so high for some people, but I don't know. I think the drawbacks, it's the risk reward. How much are you really willing to give up? How important is it really? Is your whole health and your whole sense of morality and having to deal with the guilt and shame of hiding in these secrets? Like, I think the problem is culture, society thinks of winning as too high of a thing on a pedestal. Yeah. It's like, winning is great. Money is great. Being rich is great. Being able to get the notoriety is great and not have those stresses of poverty and whatever. But it doesn't make a fulfilled life and person. And oftentimes I feel like if it's held up and propped up on a lie, it's almost like you're setting yourself up for this massive fall from grace. Like you're going to fuck your whole life up even worse than you thought the gains that you were getting were.
Yeah. Excellence, though, is still like the highest good in our society.
Excellence.
Whether that's right or wrong, when we see the best of the best, that is what people look up to the most. Yeah. And not only in sport, but like you think about like Hollywood and others, like those that are the best, like that everyone is drawn to that person. Yeah. So if that's the desire of the athlete and the only way to get there is to take, or they believe is to take a drug, then, it's hard for that person. I get that, did you read the article that Morning Chocolate put out where the Nycolas, I don't know, how do you say his last name? Joyal. But he basically was saying that he was in a really dark place. This isn't an excuse, but he's just saying, I'm looking at all these people around me. I felt like I wasn't getting better. I'm in a really dark place, and I need to improve.
I feel bad for saying I take it back.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
I hope you're okay, but
that doesn't make me feel bad about
your
him.
actions
I'm just
suck.
saying because everyone's in that place at some point. If you want to be competitive, I'm in a really dark place a lot of the time in my life, and you just have to make the right decision.
And I think a lot of people make bad decisions.
Sure.
I think everybody makes bad decisions
Sure.
in their life. And it sucks to do it on a public platform where the whole world sees it and then get publicly shamed for it. But it's also like we put up the winning on the pedestal. Because I think excellence can exist in CrossFit without
winning.
Without even being good at the competition. Like I have seen some people that are intermediate athletes where I'm like, holy shit, your double unders are so smooth, your muscle ups are so smooth, your movement quality when you're barbell cycling is so good, your focus and attention to detail and maximizing every rep is so good, but you're, as a guy, 5'3", 145 pounds, and you're just never going to have the frame to be competitive.
Well, excellence
but
is
they're
tied
more
to winning.
excellent. Yeah, well, that's part of the problem.
Yeah.
Is that we don't even perceive, most people don't even perceive mastery. Like, and can't comprehend the fact that you could take second or fifth at the CrossFit Games and actually be severely underperforming because it's like, well, you get all the reward, you get all the money, all the spotlight. Everyone wants to know what you're doing in training and your food. But inside, that person could be completely dysfunctional and doing everything horribly for them and underperforming. But people aren't sitting back and thinking and really, they don't know we don't know these people. I don't know how a lot of these people are training and how they feel about themselves and whether they're happy and fulfilled and their relationships are good. And so it is a problem, but I don't know if it's one for us to solve.
Not to stay on topic much longer, but I guess one question I would have is, would it be worth it to have a division where you could take whatever you want?
Oh, I think it would be interesting to see. Go ahead.
I was going to say, you know what's really impressive is Hiller, anytime he brings up this supplement people keep popping for, he just rattles that shit off. He's like Louis Simmons talking about Phelps 275 box squat. Like just fucking, he just GW158. I'm like, how did you memorize that?
He did a lot of research. And maybe he edits out his dumb talk.
Oh, yeah.
Can you edit my dumb talk out?
I'm going to probably edit some of my dumb talk out.
It's just beep the whole time. Yeah. All right. What's your next question, Chris?
Let's see. What else did we have?
You said that almost seductively.
So we had, I saw Dave Castro's doing those update videos now, and he had Miranda. What's her new last name? Well, it's been new for a while now. Yeah. And Street Parking was there at the ranch, and they had some video of it in this Dave Castro update. And I thought that was cool because she's created this whole world of like, just doing CrossFit with people who aren't trying to be like the elite of the elite.
Yeah.
And I know that hits home for you guys because we're in this weird position where, kind of like in training, the sexy thing is the muscle up and it's not the progressions. Well, in the CrossFit YouTube, media space, it's like the sexy thing is the sport. But I know big passions of both you guys is doing that, similar to Street Parking, just coaching the regular person.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to pick y'all's brains on that.
Yeah. I have two passions on this side. One is coaching the regular person that wants to dedicate less time but get the maximum output in the sport, like a more beginner that's like, hey, I just want to make it into the intermediate division. I want to make it to an intermediate competition, because then training time, what they do, how you give them skill work, how you keep it fun, it becomes a good project. And then the other is teaching, which I think I'm still going through this journey myself, is teaching people that they can be okay and fit and keep getting better without crushing themselves, without beating themselves up, without needing to see their back squat go up every single week. Like if somebody can back squat their body weight or slightly above their body weight, which isn't really a major target, and they could maintain that for 30 years into their 50s or into their 60s, I think that's a way better barometer for fitness and health and longevity than a Fran time. Like, I don't think that, and I don't think it's functional. Like, think about the word functional fitness is like function is you're going to use this shit in your life. It's like, when is anybody like, okay, for the next 3 minutes, you have to maintain your highest possible heart rate in these very linear and structured patterns and swing your spine around like you're doing butterfly stroke in the pool and that is going to be functional to your regular life. It's like, even if you had to run away from a lion, it's like you're fucking running. You're not going to be like, oh my God, a lion. Just start doing thrusters at full speed.
What a ridiculous.
I just had a great vision.
We get your point, though.
Yeah. So I think that it's a good thing that there's a big part of the community that is not training to be competitive. But I do think that there's an opportunity for us to figure out, can we make aspects of the sport more congruent with the ideology in a way that the people that are just doing it for fun can have leaders, role models, targets, so that so those athletes can continue to do it.
That's what I was going to say.
There's competition.
There's another big aspect of people who, like with all y'all's individual clients, what's the rate of people like who stick with you guys? It's amazing. One time I was asking around, it's like people are not just
3 years.
Yeah, it's like people stick with coaching for a good amount of time. And what you find is like after a good chunk of these people, once their competitive desire either fades or they start a family or something like that, they still want to do this, but not, they're not now trying to be a competitor.
Yeah. I would say that that's probably my biggest passion, is taking people from a high level or someone that's just doing the sport, even if it wasn't at a high level, to, hey, now I have a family, Chris, to your example, or I have a full-time job and I can't get into the gym for 3 hours a day, but I still want to stay fit.
Yeah.
And coming up with a game plan that allows them to continue to do the things that they love, but also keep them healthy.
Yeah.
And then if they want to jump back in, like there are plenty of people that get that itch again when they become like a master's athlete, or, oh, I'm turning 45 next year. I had someone just tell me that the other day. It's like, maybe I want to jump back into this now. I'm looking
once
at
a week, I'll do the throwdown and see where I'm at.
And it's really easy to stay in shape when your number one priority is preparing for a competition and you have nothing else going on except that thing, and you're doing it for 8 hours a day, and you have people sending you food and all this stuff. You don't realize how like all of that discipline and dedication and all that stuff that we idealize as good stuff, how it's like this rewarding circular feedback loop. It's like, you're continuing to be disciplined to do it because you're doing well at the competitions and you're getting sponsor money, you're getting all this stuff. But then once that ends, it's like the incentive structure changes. You're like, well, I'm kind of sore today, I don't want to do that. And it's such a slippery slope, and it doesn't take that long to take somebody from the peak of the zenith of their athletic experience, when they are the best that they're ever going to be, and the deterioration process in a couple years, you can meet those people.
It happens so fast.
Oh, wow. I saw it in football a lot, where you see people and you're like, oh, you put on like 50 pounds of body fat. You don't move well. Your skin starting to look like it breaks down. And without having those good hygiene practices and those good food behavior and a good self-concept and a good understanding of how you can exercise in different ways that are not necessarily tied to performance, it becomes really important in people's lives, even if they don't realize it and it's not sexy and popular. Eventually, that shit eats people alive. And you see athletes that are like, beautiful people that are really great, and then you look at them and you're like, oh man, you really fell deep into the despair of not taking care of yourself.
Yeah. I do think, going back to the street parking talk, they are doing a great job, and others that are doing what they're doing, kind of like targeting that audience that's at home, the mom that maybe is staying at home with kids, or the dad that's busy, whatever. Like, we need more of that in the CrossFit space because it's keeping people healthier for longer, which is really cool.
Yeah. I feel like we also need leaders in the CrossFit space inside of CrossFit who are, and maybe they already have this, but who are just as passionate about the development of the sport. Because I feel like I've listened to some podcasts of people that I know are notable level 4 people that are on seminar staff that go around, and like, some people just don't care about it.
Do you think it's because, sorry to cut you off.
That's okay if they don't care. You're just saying we also need some people.
We need some people at that level that are also being advocates and passionate. And it's not just, and some of them, they don't attend events. They don't watch it. They don't know the people that are at the highest level.
Let me ask you this question. I think this may be why. Do you think it's because a lot of them tried to be competitive at one point and weren't good enough, and now they're upset that there are others that are better than them?
Yeah, I think it's not good enough, but also that you can't take it. Like,
that's
what I mean.
They are mad that they can't be there, so they're like, sport doesn't matter.
But I get what you're going
I don't think. I mean, the people I've talked to that are higher up in that world, I feel like that a lot of people have frustration because they couldn't get to the place that they wanted to be.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I have some of that too. Like, I think even I struggle sometimes being like, man, if the sport was designed differently, and it wasn't, being 250 pounds, I have to do 40 muscle ups a week or whatever, just to be able to do these workouts at a moderate standard. But it just kind of is what it is. It's like it self-selects for that. And I think for me, breaking the association and being like, oh, in order to be fit, I don't need to be fit according to that competition leaderboard. I think almost everybody goes through that at some point. And there's nothing wrong with it. But I think, like I said, I just think there needs to be people advocating for it and creating a message for it and a direction for the change. And I listened to a podcast, that one specifically, and I was like, oh, this person is like super involved in the internal belly of the beast with the most powerful people in the industry that are involved in the CrossFit space. And like, it's such a disconnected concept. It's like more important thing is like whatever he's got going on in his life and training and not training crazily and just affiliate management. And that's fine. I think that's necessary for CrossFit's growth, but it's also necessary for CrossFit sport growth or the sport of fitness, that people are at that same level of passion about just like CrossFit changed my life on like the sport is awesome. And I don't think there's a lot of that. I think a lot of them are like, this thing's a fucking pain in the ass. There's just problems. It's like, this is it's only about the fittest on earth. It's showcase. And it's like, all right, well, if that's how the leadership thinks about it and it's not important to create change, then there won't be a lot of change because the focus will be on the other more important things. So hopefully somebody, I mean, maybe those people are already out there, but hopefully some way of disseminating that information out so that people like us or Proven or Hard Work Pays Off or Mayhem or Comp Train that are involved in the competitive space can feel confident in the direction that it's going. It's like, oh, here's how we're going to make these changes. Hiller was on a podcast that I listened to, and he actually was talking about that. And I thought that it was just an interesting concept that he had no faith in and was attacking HQ. Like he's just vocal, like, I'm attacking it. I'm not attacking it. I'm just saying like, oh, I kind of agree with that. I think it would ease a lot of the frustration of the whole market if we just heard, hey, this is what we're doing, and here are the passionate people that are handling it, and here are the problems we're trying to solve, and here's next year's plan and the communication plan.
That would be cool, is if there was like someone at the top that you could just feel their passion.
Yeah.
And I think Dave
Castro
probably had
that.
Yeah.
But he didn't have, I feel like, the corporate or like he wasn't an advocate at the time, at least. Maybe he'll change. That was listening. It was almost like he was like, yeah, I'll hear you, but I don't give a shit. And if you bring up this concern about something, I'm going to double down on it in the next year.
Yeah,
like
maybe he'd be different at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. It would be cool to just have someone that you're like looking up to who's like,
hey, this is what we're
radiating
doing.
Fucking happiness for the thing that you're all putting your eggs and times in.
That was one thing about Castro being the main guy, is you knew that he cared, and you could see that he cared, and you could see that he was running a team of people that cared. It doesn't mean it was perfect. I'm not saying I didn't have shit I was super frustrated with for years while he was the main man in charge, but that's the biggest difference I notice right now, is it seems like the attention to detail has changed. And it's changed with more resources, which is strange.
Now, you said don't define yourself by a leaderboard. You brought that up a little bit, defining yourself off a leaderboard. What's y'all's 2K times? I want to know if y'all beat Sevan.
I saw his. I actually watched that video. He was 7:39.
Can you beat him?
Yeah, I was like 6:39.
Oh, nice. Brandon?
Yeah. I don't know what I could hit right now.
I think
Brandon could go sub 6:30.
I think
the fastest I ever had was 6:27.
He was 7:39.
I'm wanting to say I'm somewhere around there. Yeah. I don't know if I beat him.
There are guys now that are getting 6:20, 6:19. It's insane.
But he's way older than me, so
he's 51. I actually was really impressed by that. And then watching him afterwards, and that was a video. I got sucked into so much clickbait literally yesterday. I can't believe you're talking about that, but that was one of the videos I watched. And I guess he got called out. He did the 2K. He doesn't seem like a very large man. I don't know for sure.
I think he's a little smaller.
Like he's like 5'6".
He might be like under me. I don't think he's 5'11".
Okay.
I think I'm taller than him, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I have this impression that he was shorter, but I don't know if I'm just making that up. But he's in his 50s, and he was like, I'm not fit. I'm fit relative to a Starbucks person. So I was expecting like not a sub 8 minute 2K row, and I watched him do it. He was talking about wanting to quit in the middle of it, which I related with, because I'm like, man, I've been in fucking endurance tests and been like 2 minutes in, like, oh, I got to do this for 20 minutes and I'm already in this much pain. How am I going to handle this? So that was relatable. And then he was doing strict pull-ups afterwards, and then he talked about how disciplined he was with his training. And I was like, this guy's like actually practicing what he preaches, the importance of CrossFit. And I think he was one of the people in the system before he got kicked out that really did love it and was passionate about it.
Yeah.
But I feel like a lot of times when people are like that, they might not actually be walking the walk. So to see him still walking the walk as he has his own platform and advocating it as a method for being healthy, it was like a respectful moment. I was I felt like connected on it.
I think for Sevan, we were just talking about, we need a guy on the sports side who's like a big advocate and like waves the flag, waves the flag proudly. I feel like Sevan's that for the opposite side, for the methods of CrossFit. I love that he's so passionate about it just being what it was always supposed to be.
Yeah,
it's like nice having a guy out there saying all that stuff. But do you think I should do a row and see if I can beat him?
Yeah,
we can live stream it.
No, we can't live stream it.
Just in case you have to stop.
But then he has to get a no hands Nordic. And then if he could do that, then we could be tied.
I
got my first one the other day.
You should do a 2K into a no hands Nordic.
If you did a no hands Nordic, if you row a sub 739, get off, and then do a no hands Nordic, and then pose the challenge to him that he should even just do the Nordic, I feel like that'd be
okay.
You would beat a lot of people.
And then I'll start
no one could do that.
Yeah, I'll start the video talking shit to him. Like, Sevan, you think you're good at media? Media guy's more fit than you.
No. I never get put above Sevan. The guy's at the top.
Somebody asked in the comments last week, and I actually am interested in this too, Max. You mentioned Travis. You had that conversation with him where we were talking about complaints. And Travis had a complaint to you saying, hey, we're doing too much in-gym stuff. I want to go outside the gym. And you just read his message. But they asked in the comment section, what was the solution there? Did you basically say, okay, what do you want to do? Or did he dictate that? How did that work?
I just wrote it differently.
Okay.
Yeah, I just put him outside. Part of it was actually talking about the big picture plan, because the plan originally when I wrote, Travis doesn't like to be involved in understanding his training until he wants to be involved with his training. It's like he's like, oh, I trust you 100%. Just do whatever you think is right. And then he'll go through training, and then he'll recognize something off, and then that will be the trigger and the catalyst for him wanting to get involved. So generally, I do all of the planning and all of the thinking and all the construction of the environment stuff, and then he'll just almost be like my feedback mechanism. So with the environment, because we had Jake and Sarah.
That sounds like a perfect way to do it, by the way. I create the plan and you give me the feedback.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
It works really well.
Yeah.
It sometimes is a pain in the ass when you go through all that thinking and then somebody challenges it and you're like, shit, I didn't think about that. Now
but then you get to make the call if it's a good challenge or not.
Yeah.
Or if you agree.
Yeah, no, I mean, they have probably been my best teachers. I think Noah, Travis, and basically anybody I have a high level, because that they do provide that.
Especially those that have been in it for a long time, because then they really know their bodies.
Yeah,
and
they're
need.
basically coaches at this point. Right. You know, like they can coach themselves. They could probably they do. Like Jacob Hebner retired and started coaching people. Matt Frazier retired and started coaching people.
Exactly.
There's some expertise that you gain from walking the walk. I think it's a different type of expertise.
Can we start saying thrust and the thrust?
Thrust and the thrust. Yeah. Do you thrust the thrust? So back to Travis. So I wrote the training because Jake and Sarah were both on site and they were competing in Last Chance. I was like, okay, what's the best way to create the training environment in a way that we're going to try to leverage everybody's current training goals, instead of thinking Travis is doing games prep and Sarah's doing Last Chance and Alexis is doing games prep. It becomes like, well, you have all these people that are going to benefit from working together more than they're going to benefit from being totally isolated, just because this time of the year, it gets real hard. There's a lot of volume, a lot of hard work, a lot of heavy lifting. Doing it all by yourself all the time, it can wear on people and make it a little bit less fun. So I thought, okay, from when I started the training until Last Chance, the shared training was all Coliseum oriented, which meant we were going to be practicing in the gym stuff more regularly. There was a couple outside things, but then once Last Chance ended, it's basically a 4-week block of training where we try to make a more balanced distribution, because you can't really make that many gains on, like, if you want to be peaked on a road bike, it's the same thing with swimming. Is like, are you going to dedicate 3 sessions a week to putting somebody on a bike, not even knowing if there's going to be a bike workout there? Probably not. So then it becomes about, okay, let's use this last month as a way to get out, get some exposure, touch the bike, touch the thing. So part of it was me kind of just communicating the plan,
right,
and him being like, oh, okay, I see that now. And then I just put some extra additional stuff in there. Like, instead of making the field work sprint oriented and drill oriented, I wrote a Metcon that just like row and then handstand walk, sled drag, run, just like a smash fest. So he got used to that kind of feel, which is what he's looking for. He's just like, I know that I'm going to be exposed to this type of stuff, and I want some exposure before we go. So I just combination of communication and just delivering directly on what he asked for.
Yeah, it's a hard balance as a coach, because you get that feedback and you want to deliver what they think they need, but sometimes you know that maybe that's not exactly what they need. Now, with Travis and Noah and those, again, they've done it for so long, then they're pretty dialed in.
Yeah.
But let's say someone that's kind of like the middle of their career, and there's still some things that you can identify as a coach that are a weakness. You know they need to work on it, and even though they say something else. But at the same time, you still have to give them a dose of it. Otherwise, they lose confidence.
Yeah.
So it's just always this back and forth. And as long as you can keep the communication channels open, I think that you can do a good job at that. But it is one of the hard challenges of being a coach.
Yeah. It's theory versus reality, too.
Yeah.
It's like the idealist thing. It's like I have this ideal of what I want the training and how the peak looks. But then you get into it, and it's like, oh, life is so messy.
Right.
Like, Travis's kid was sick and he didn't sleep and he comes in and he was, and all of these things, they just matter. And you can't be so theoretically dialed in and expect it to play out that way, because it's messy.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and close it out there.
Should press that record button.
No,
let's just keep going.
Keep it rolling.
Can it?
Yeah.